As a surfer, we only get such a limited time actually standing up riding waves during a surf session that anything we can do to increase that time is going to exponentially decrease the learning curve required to get better at surfing. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Simon. I'm the founder and co-owner of Renegade Surf Travel, and we run world-class surf coaching trips in some of the most progression-friendly waves on Earth. If you want to find out more about what we do, hit the link in the description below, head over to our website where you can see our full trip schedule and information over there. All right, in this video, we are looking at the top 5 reasons why you might be missing waves. Number 1, and by far in my opinion, the most common reason why you might be missing waves is because of your positioning. Positioning is by far the most important factor when it comes to catching waves. You might be on the right surfboard with great paddle fitness, but if you're not sitting in the right spot, you're just not going to catch the wave. It's as simple as that. And what we see a lot of surfers do is they kind of paddle out and they sit where they feel comfortable rather than where the wave is actually breaking. You know, they might have seen some big sets and they're sitting too far out, and so only the very biggest sets are coming to where they're sitting, and then when those biggest sets come, they want nothing to do with them anyway. Or they're sitting wide, perhaps it's crowded, they don't want to go get involved with the pack. Or even more common is they're just kind of drifting around the lineup, hoping that a wave comes to them rather than identifying where the best waves are breaking and going to that spot. So you've probably heard people say this before, but it genuinely helps a lot. And this is spend 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be on the beach. It could be in the lineup. Watching where the very best waves are breaking. Try and identify a specific spot before you paddle out or before you paddle up to the peak, where you can kind of paddle there confidently knowing that this is where the best waves are breaking. 2 other really great tips here are, and this one's a little bit more kind of relevant to our trips where you might be surfing from a boat. And this is if you get dropped off behind the waves. So quite often we'll approach the lineup from behind and you'll be jumping in and all you can kind of see is the back of the waves. Unless you already know that wave really well and you know where the takeoff spots and the lineups are, paddle to the inside or into the channel and then work your way back up towards the peak. It's so hard to identify where the best place is to be if you've been dropped off at the peak or behind the waves, but having that time to paddle up through the channel, watching where the best sets are breaking is super, super beneficial, especially if you haven't surfed the wave a lot before. And then the second one is to identify where is the white foam in the lineup. Now, every time a wave comes through and breaks, it's gonna leave a sort of clue, if you like, a trail of white foam, which if it's a good wave will kind of be in a diagonal line down the reef or down the point or whatever. And so looking for the edge of that kind of white line of foam is going to help you identify where that wave is breaking and where to sit. Reason number 2 that you might not be catching enough waves, and this is probably the easiest one to fix, but maybe the hardest on your ego, and that is you are riding the wrong surfboard. And I get it, when you're up and riding, you want to have the opportunity to do your best surfing, but if you're not catching the wave in the first place, you're getting such diminished opportunity to do that anyway. And to be honest, riding a bigger board, it forces you to use proper technique, which then translates so much better when you do get onto your small board. There's so much to be said for having at least one bigger board in your quiver, in your board bag on a trip. You know, when you're at day 9 and your body's absolutely wrecked, your shoulders have got nothing left, being able to jump on that 6'6" or 6'8" mid-length and just catch a ton of waves has so much value when you're spending a lot of money on a surf trip. Now, one of the most common pushbacks that we hear in regards to surfboards is, oh, I'd love to be on a bigger board, but it's too hard to duck dive. In my opinion, this is not a reason to buy or not to buy a surfboard. I get it, it's really nice to be able to duck dive a 26-litre shortboard, but if you're not catching waves, it's completely irrelevant. What you're gonna lose in duck dive ability, you're gonna gain in the ability to paddle with so much more speed and momentum when you do actually get going. And so I don't really see it as that much of a trade-off, but yeah, please don't buy a surfboard because it's easy to duck dive. As an average surfer or someone who's kind of improving or not a professional surfer, The reality is that our positioning is not perfect 80% of the time. And all we're doing really by riding a bigger board is increasing the size of the circle that we can sit in when we're kind of hunting waves in the lineup. So unless you're a surfer who's going out every session and coming in thinking, I got plenty of waves, happy days, look at getting a bigger surfboard in your quiver. All right, now number 3 seems really obvious, but again, we see this all the time, particularly in kind of level 2, level 2.5 surfers. And that is that they will sit in the lineup, identify a wave, and as soon as they've kind of realized, yeah, okay, this is a good one for me, they turn, paddle with their head down, and not once look back to see what the wave's doing. Now, the problem with this is, as soon as you stop watching the wave, you stop having any ability to read the wave, right? And waves shift, they move, they bend, they move off the bank, they move onto the reef, they double up, they fatten out. And we need to be able to make these constant micro adjustments as we paddle into a wave. So once you've identified the wave, try to resist the urge to kind of just paddle blindly towards the shore. You want to watch the wave as long as you possibly can, even if that means watching it while you're paddling, checking over both shoulders. Okay, is the lip feathering? Where is kind of the dark spot on the wave, which shows you where it's getting steep? And finally, on this point, not every wave is a good wave. We really want to try and kind of put our effort into good waves. Otherwise, we're going to burn ourselves out really quickly in a session if we're just paddling for anything that moves. Something I always say to guests on the trip is just because you can catch the wave doesn't mean that you should. So make sure you've identified a good wave, keep watching it the whole time, and only then kind of really paddle with purpose and commit to the wave. On to number 4, and number 4 is one of those classic sort of surfing counterintuitive things where you basically need to override your brain screaming at you to do one thing and do the exact opposite thing in order to get the desired result. When you're paddling for a wave and you feel the back of your board start to lift, a lot of surfers will kind of arch their back or try and shift their weight back on the board because they're scared of purling or nosediving on the takeoff. But all this does is kind of stops you entering the wave as early as possible. And the steeper the wave gets, if you're kind of moving your weight back on your board like that, the later your drop is going to be and the more chance that you have of nosediving or purling. So when we feel the back of the board lift like this, we actually want to do the exact opposite thing than what our brain is telling us. When we feel like we're gonna tip forward, we almost need to tip forward more and just commit to getting into the wave as early as possible. It's gonna allow us to get down and into the wave earlier rather than kind of hesitating and getting hung up in the lip at the top of the wave, which is going to give us that steeper later drop and increase the chance that we purl. If you watch clips of guys surfing waves like Chopu, I mean, you couldn't really get a steeper wave, and they're certainly not paddling into the wave like this, kind of with their weight back. Everything is forward, their chest, their chin, even their arms are digging deep to get them down the wave, match the angle of the wave so that they can get in as early as possible before the wave gets too steep and so they don't get caught in the lip. This one's a little bit harder to fix because it does require kind of overriding your instinct. But if you do find that you are nosediving a lot, there's 2 kind of common causes. The first one is simply you're sitting too far in or not watching the wave, and so it's kind of getting too steep and breaking on you. But the kind of less obvious one is that as you feel the wave pick you up, you're not committing to get down the wave with your chest and everything, kind of trying to tip the board to match the angle of the wave. All right, last but by no means least, number 5 is the one that people tend to blame for why they're not catching waves, when in reality, one of the previous 4 points is usually the culprit. However, there does become a point where a lack of paddle fitness does become people's limiting factor, especially on something like a 10-day coaching trip where we might be surfing for 6 hours every day. And so the more you can do to prepare your body ahead of a trip is going to massively increase your wave count and stop you missing waves. Now, it just so happens that my business partner Dale is actually an incredible online coach and surf-specific personal trainer, and he's made a comprehensive training video that you can see linked here. Go and check out that video if you feel like your fitness is something that's holding you back when it comes to catching waves. This one takes a bit of preparation ahead of a trip. You know, you need at least 2 or 3 months to really see any gains. But if you do have that time, put in some consistent work and it is going to pay absolute dividends when you get on your trip. That wraps it up for today's video. Hopefully you found that useful. If you've got any other tips, please drop them in the comments below. I'm sure our other viewers will find those super useful as well, and we can get a bit of a discussion going. And I will see you in the next video.